Hi, in this video we're going to have a guest interview talking about her career as a software developer. You can see on the screen here that I have an article that was blogged in February of 2021, and it's from Christina. Her title was catchy. It says, "I followed my dreams and got demoted to a software developer." And so that's why I'm interested to talk. And so she came into my classroom virtually and talked about her transition as a new career. She was in design and a manager, and now she has picked up programming and coding and is now more of the back end in C Sharp and .NET. And so read the article here before you watch the interview if you're interested in this kind of thing, and we're going to hear from her. So she tells us what it's like to work at Stack Overflow and transition from a role as a manager and in user design and now into coding. She also worked at Facebook, and so there's some comparisons between what it's like to work at a large tech company and a relatively smaller one, such as Stack Overflow. And if you're a programmer, you're probably very familiar with Stack Overflow and how they work and what their business model is and what it would be like as a company culture. And so this, along with other things about career advice for students, is right ahead of us. So let's get started with our talk with Christina. What we're interested in today is to hear about what your career experiences is. All of us here are about ready to graduate in the next year, maybe two, and we're all trying to become software developers. So we've studied programming. We've got some experience with Java and C Sharp and PHP and JavaScript and the whole collection of server and databases and client side. And all of us are nervous that we're not going to get a job. And so when we saw your blog post that said you took a demotion to become a software developer, of course, that was an attention-grabbing headline. We're all trying to become promoted to a software developer, and you seem to have taken a step down. So why don't you give us a quick background of why you wrote this blog post and how you got to where you are and what you do?
Yes, all right. I'll try to be quick about it. So instead of studying computer science or software engineering in college, I actually studied linguistics, which I really liked. But when I graduated, I kind of quickly realized that there wasn't there wasn't much there for me out there outside of academia. Um, and my senior year of college, I took an intro to computer science class, and I loved it. And it was my second semester senior year, so it was a bit late for me to do anything about that. So kind of filed it away, worked tech support for a while, and then went back to school for human computer interaction, which is a bit closer. It was in the School of Computer Science at the university I went to. And then I worked at Facebook for 3 years as a UX researcher. So I kind of veered into the design area, um, and spent some time there. And all the while, I've been kind of coding for fun, making games, working on little websites or apps or whatever, just kind of trying to keep up with it, but not actually really thinking I could do it for a career. And then um, I went over to Stack Overflow and was doing research there, and then kind of worked my way up to be running the design team there. So everyone who's responsible for everything you see on the site, um, the designs. So I did that for a while and realized that I didn't really like management very much at all. I'm glad I tried it, but I decided that I actually wanted to pursue this coding thing that I've been enjoying for so long, but had only really been doing it as a hobby. So I went to my manager and told her I needed to quit so I could go learn programming, or get a more well-rounded actual education. And she said, well, you could just do that here. So it was I guess, an extremely fortunate, like very lucky circumstance that let me fill in the gaps in my programming knowledge uh, while I was still working at Stack Overflow. And so I've been now officially working as a developer for about a year here. And so I wrote this blog post just to kind of, I guess, try to talk to people who maybe have who are in a similar space as I was, where I loved programming, but I was super nervous about ever really attempting to do it as a career, because working at Facebook and then working at Stack Overflow, I was just surrounded by the smartest people I've ever met, and all of whom are way better at programming than I am. So it was, I wanted to talk to people who maybe felt a similar uncertainty or similar lack of confidence in their skills, that like, actually it's a thing, you can do it, or at least try it.
Yeah. So
um,
tell us more about design. Are you interested in design, like in typefaces and colors and CSS and uh, like thumbnails and wireframes? Is that what you're talking about when you say design?
yeah, so we kind of cover everything from user experience design, so more like on the wireframe side, more on the like interaction side, all the way up through to um, like brand design, like colors and typefaces. My main interest in design personally is much, I guess, much earlier in the design process, is much more around the like wireframes and interactions and user experience, which is why I worked as a researcher for several years. I'm much more interested in how people interact with the software and how in that part of the design process than I am in the actual visual designs. Though in my job, I do front end development as well. So I do have to play around with CSS and such there.
Sure. So since you're a design expert, tell us if
I don't
you
know if I
have,
would go that far.
well, I guess if you're a professional, you're working in the field and working at Facebook and Stack Overflow is certainly a good resume. So all of us here in the classes that you're looking at right now would just say design. Oh, you mean Bootstrap, and then we're done. We just say the buttons are blue and the menu looks good and it's in Helvetica font. What more do we need to know?
um, I think the most important thing that you can know working as a developer about design is how to interact with designers. I guess knowing the different terms and knowing at least a little bit about how design is approaching a problem can really help you when you're implementing designs. So you you can look at a mock-up and know how many pixels this spacing needs to be, or you understand how this button is meant to function, like how the interaction is meant to work. So it's definitely more than just Bootstrap, but I would say the most important thing is being able to communicate with designers. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Sure. While we're on the subject of your career, so uh, Facebook is one of the big companies, maybe the big five, you might say, of the, what do you call them, the FANG companies.
Mhm.
So is the hype real? Like, should Google, Microsoft, Facebook, the other Apple, or the big Amazon, are they really worth it, or should we settle for the local company here in Phoenix and get a job that might not be such a name brand?
I have a I have a lot of opinions on this topic. um, so I am really happy that I was there for a few years when I was there, because I was surrounded by people who were experts and I was just starting out as a researcher. So I learned a lot about a lot really, really fast because I kind of had to. So that experience was good. At the same time, I feel that when you're working at a company that big, the your purview, the range of things that you're working on is very, very small. So when I was at Facebook, I spent a whole year working on just the thing where you write in your Facebook status. Like, and there's a whole organization of people around working on that one small thing, or like just the search bar. Um, and for some people, that's their thing, and that's great. Um, I think that working at a smaller company where you might have a wider range of things that you're responsible for might also be a really good idea. I can't imagine myself going back to work at a larger company after working at Stack Overflow, which is much smaller. Uh, I just wouldn't go and be the only developer at a place or when you're just starting out, because then you won't get the benefit of having mentors in your job. And you'll probably, I don't know, you'll probably start having, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, you might pick up like bad best practices because you don't have anyone to guide you, basically.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So having smart coworkers is really a huge benefit. So,
Yes. Optimize for that, for
right.
sure.
Okay. Very good. Okay. So your blog article told you about your gradual shift. So tell me what you've learned in the last year, what kind of programming languages that you've picked up now that you're thinking more in code than you are in design. So what have you learned and how did you learn it?
Yeah. Hmm. So the area that I was most, I guess, deficient in, that I needed to brush up the most on, was back end. The most of the stuff that I'd worked on was small enough that I didn't really need to have any sort of like structured back end. Like the games that I've been working on were in just in Lua, and most of them were just kind of hacked together. Let's just throw everything in this one big main.lua file, a disaster. But it's practice. So I worked with my mentor and now my manager at Stack Overflow to sorry, my phone just rang and really distracted me. Sorry. So I worked with him. We put together kind of a curriculum for me. And so I grew my skills by building things, like building apps. Specifically, we're building a Pokédex, like a Pokemon Pokédex, as the
Okay.
first project, using Python and Flask, like Flask as I guess, like the core of the app. Um, and then from there, I needed to learn. Stack Overflow uses .NET, so I needed to learn C Sharp. Um, and I but before I did that, sorry, before I did that, I also made my own little Animal Crossing app. There's like a video game theme here, but
Right.
I
Yeah.
made an Animal Crossing app in Flask as well, and then moved on to C Sharp. I had to do like a self-contained, like create an entire web app C Sharp .NET project at work before I actually started working on the Stack Overflow code base.
Okay.
So
So your boss said, go learn this, show me what you can do, and then we'll give you the new job.
pretty much.
Yeah. So where do you go to learn? Do you just go to YouTube or do you go to school or how did you do that?
I personally learn best by just setting myself a goal and then just figuring out how to get there. So that's a lot of Googling. That's a lot of trial and error, I guess. But I'm actually not great at kind of sitting down and watching a YouTube video to teach me something, or sitting down and reading a book about something. I learn much better by just trying something that's like slightly too difficult for me.
Right. Okay. So learn by discovery
Yeah.
is so, and Stack Overflow is a perfect resource to that kind of learning.
Yes, I definitely spend a lot of time there. I did, and also continue to spend a lot of time there, not in my capacity as an employee. Well, also that, but primarily looking up answers for things.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to anticipate some questions here from the people that are around me. So I'm looking at one of my students right now who is kind of interested in engineering, but has come into software development. And so this person will probably start learning a new job after they graduate. So what do you do when you think that you've joined the wrong degree, but it's too late?
Well, that is kind of exactly what I did. uh, I would say so. Okay, let me approach that from a different angle. At Stack Overflow, when we're looking at people's resumes to determine whether or not we want to talk to them and see if maybe they would be a good fit to work here, one of the things that we're really interested in is how how passionate people seem about what they do or what they want to do. So when we look at a resume, we also look at people's like GitHub, and we look at their website if they have one. And basically, we're looking to see like, how much is this person doing on their own? Like, how much is this person doing that's not just their class assignments, or not just their work or whatever. And so if I see someone who maybe doesn't have like the exact degree, but spends a lot of their free time or whatever working on projects that are related to that, and are like seem really interested in that, for me that's more compelling than a degree with none of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. So you're judging the person's motives and their commitment to the career.
Yeah.
So you switched from management to becoming a programmer. Is that less frustrating for you or more interesting? Were you bored with your previous job, or what was the motivation there?
Yeah, I would actually say that I was bored with my previous job. I felt like, I mean, I really liked and still do like everyone that I worked with on the design team. But I I like having difficult problems to throw my brain at. That's kind of what keeps me interested. That's what keeps me working. And management has has problems like that, but not really like logic problems or things that really grab my attention.
Here's a question coming in from Bill. Let's take a look, and it says, how many people do you work with on a typical team?
Yeah, so the team that I work on at Stack Overflow right now is the public platform team. So we are responsible for basically everything you see when you go to Stack Overflow, like the question page and the question list page, and all that's basically what you think of when you think of Stack Overflow. And that is about 6 developers right now, 1 designer, 1 product manager. So for us, it's I guess, a pretty small team. And yeah, we're moving more. I saw the other question come in. We're moving more towards agile. So we're having daily stand-ups and sprints and retros and such, which works actually pretty well.
How many people work at Stack Overflow?
I don't know the precise number. It's around 300, give or take.
And of that, would there be a significant number of developers, or is it not so much?
I should definitely know the answer to this.
Approximately, is that a third or
I would
half?
say definitely less than a third. I would say maybe about half is product overall. So design, engineering, product management is maybe about half of the company, but I'm really ballparking it.
Sure. And are they located in Pennsylvania? Is that the headquarters?
No, I guess their technical headquarters are in New York, but everyone or most people are remote, and I've been working remote for 4 years. Everyone's remote now, obviously, but Stack Overflow has a very distributed workforce with some people in the New York office, a few people in the London office, but mostly spread out everywhere.
Okay. Now, into your typical developer that you hire, is there a certain degree, like is computer science, software development, software engineering, any cybersecurity? What's the thing that you're looking for as far as their education?
I think that totally depends on the individual job. And I'm probably not the best person to answer that, as I think the most junior developer on our team.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're not hiring the people anymore, huh? You were
Yeah.
before. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Fair enough. Okay, I got another question. Is in especially in my computer science classes, we are either 100% guys or 90%. I look in the engineering school, and it's maybe a lot, maybe a third of them are females, maybe up to half, and depends on the degree. But it's certainly underrepresented. What are we doing that scares girls and they don't want to join us? Or have you felt any of that? Or tell us your feelings on what we can do better, or what's causing that.
Yeah, so I don't think I'm going to solve an industry-wide problem in a couple of minutes, but to give a couple of my thoughts here.
Well, does
Um,
Stack Overflow do anything that would be positive or negative in that way?
yeah, definitely. So I guess first off, I think culturally, computer science tends to be associated with a lot of cultural signifiers that are traditionally more masculine, like video games or math or just like nerdiness. I'm not saying that those are actually masculine in some way, but I would say stereotypically they are. And so I think that perhaps traditionally men have tried to keep this space as like a space for themselves, whether consciously or unconsciously. Um, Stack Overflow, I think the thing that makes our engineering culture feel very different, and it doesn't feel broy at all to me, is that everyone is relentlessly supportive of each other. It's not a competitive atmosphere at all. And I know from hearing from my friends that a lot of places do have a more competitive atmosphere, like everyone trying to one up each other to be the best at a thing. That's not really what happens at Stack at all. It's much more about making sure that everyone is able to do their best, which sounds corny, but I know that pretty much anyone on the team, if I have a question or if I don't know what I'm doing, like anyone is there to help me out. So having a supportive atmosphere like that, I think really broadens the kind of people who who would come in and work in a place like that.
Now, your boss sounded very supportive when you came and said, I really want to change careers and I want you to give me the chance. Almost like a mentor. Is that what you say is a mentor kind of a role? Or no?
Yeah.
Or just being
Um,
fair?
I, honestly, I think I've been at Stack Overflow for a while, and I'm kind of a known quantity to them, so they didn't want to lose me. I
Okay,
think is kind of
very
the
good.
vibe there. Yeah.
How do you find somebody that can be your mentor, that can be your smart coworker or boss that encourages you to grow?
Ask. That sounds
Okay.
really basic, but you might be surprised at how flattered people are if you reach out to them and say like, "Hey, I admire this, I don't know, open source stuff that I saw on GitHub," or um, "I think that you're really good at X thing. Can you teach me a little bit about it?" Or "Can I sit with you while you're coding?" Or whatever. Like, don't underestimate how useful just kind of asking those people is.
Sure. Okay. I got another question here about machine learning and AI. So, is software development more than coding interfaces, input forms, and databases? What's how does AI enter into Stack Overflow's work?
Okay, so acknowledging that I am now treading well outside my realm
Okay.
of
Well, how about
expertise
this?
here.
Does it exist? Is somebody thinking about it at Stack Overflow?
Yeah, definitely. And we have a data team that's working on various things. Uh, I'm not sure how much of the stuff that they have been working on is public knowledge, and so
Right.
I
Yeah,
don't want
we don't
to
want
get in
to
trouble.
divulge the secret sauce of what makes the app work. But I think
Yeah.
I think what we're the question here is probably talking about career. And so is is that something that they should pay attention to? Get electives to a self study, specialize. Is that going to make them a valuable employee, or is that a very small part of what happens out there?
I think that you should take it as an elective if it's interesting to you, because if it's not, it doesn't really matter if you learn a little bit about it because you're not really going to want to work with it at all. And it's like, it's going to end up being a bit pointless. I don't
Right.
know. That's not the best answer there, but
Well, I think that is good advice. If you don't like it, then don't bother. It's no matter how much it
yeah.
pays or how much they need you. We got some new graduates here, and of course, lots of resumes and applications are going out. What's your advice then for a successful transition from no experience to your first job?
Yeah. That is literally the toughest one, right? Like once you get the first one, then and you're pretty much golden. But that first one is so hard.
So how did you get to Facebook, for example? Like that's a big interview and a big land, you know?
Yeah, a little bit by accident. I didn't even apply there. I got contacted by a recruiter who just misread my LinkedIn. She just read it wrong, and we talked for 5 minutes, and she was like, "Oh, I thought that you had some other experience, but you can go talk to this other person." And then it ended up working out, but it was pure luck.
Oh, don't tell us
um,
that, please. What do you want? What do
I
you
mean,
want?
I'm just being honest here.
Yeah.
But I would say that one thing that is probably pretty useful to have if you're having a hard time finding that first job, if you have evidence that you, or if you can show that you've kind of built a web app from end to end, like you have successfully completed a project and I could go look at it. That means a lot towards like whether or not a place would want to talk to you and interview you.
Mhm.
If you can find open source projects to work on and contribute to those, I think that's also pretty valuable. Um, I it's tough because it's a really hard time, as y'all I'm sure are keenly aware of. But um, all you can really do is find those sorts of things that might set you apart from other folks. And most importantly, if you're applying to a place and you have a cover letter, it doesn't have to be unique for every single place, but make sure you have at least a couple sentences in there about why you want to work for a company. Because the number of resumes that I have looked at that are like, and that's why I want to work for Google,
Yeah.
are
Go apply at Google
pretty
then.
high,
Yeah.
pretty high.
Right. So you throw them away. Here's from Casey. It says, you mentioned in your article, confidence in the field was one of the biggest things holding you back. So you were not a programmer, you didn't have the education behind you, but you still went forward with it anyway. So tell us through your thought process there.
Yeah,
How did you grow in your confidence then? And how do you feel now? How do you feel now after being there for a year?
yeah, okay. Um, so I think there are a lot of ways that I was able to build enough confidence to make this career move, or to start attempting to make this career move. I think the first was actually just general confidence overall, not just confidence in my skill in this one area, but actually building my just overall confidence in myself as a person, which took a lot of work. Um, my my old therapist used to say that I had to pretend to be confident, and then I would discover that I was actually confident. So I think about that advice a lot. Realize that everyone is mostly just pretending to be confident all the time. Um, I think that with respect to my confidence as a developer, um, I kind of just told myself, well, Christina, however maybe not good you are at coding, there are definitely people out there who are working as developers who are worse at it than you. Like, I am positive there's at least one person out there, which sounds a little bit silly, but that actually really helped me. Like, okay, I'm definitely not the very worst at this. And I guess that has to be someone somewhere, but I am 99.9% sure that's not me. So just kind
Yeah.
of starting from there and then building my way up.
So had you just quit the company and started somewhere else, you would have had a completely different confidence barrier showing up, and you'd have to prove yourself as a valid employee as well as a competent coder. So
Yeah.
you had half of that taken care of just by staying where you are.
Yeah.
So I guess personally, then you called it a demotion in your blog. So you took a demotion in your title. Does that include demotion in pay and responsibilities and everything else that goes with it? Huh?
Yep. I took a pretty substantial pay cut to switch jobs.
As far as then, you did your taxes, or maybe you're going to do your taxes this year, and you look back and you say, "Wow, a pay cut." Do you feel better about where you're at then, even though it's less money?
So
Or
much better.
okay,
So much better. I mean, I realize that I'm in a really fortunate place to be able to say that, like, my happiness is worth more than making some extra money. A lot of people don't have the luxury of saying that, which I am super conscious of. But for me, it's not it's not worth the extra money if I'm not happy, and if I'm just kind of whiling away my days, like waiting anxiously for the end of the work day. Like if I'm going to be spending most of my waking hours doing a job, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure I don't hate it.
Very good. Yeah, fair enough. So let's assume that everybody you're talking to right now gets a job. They work for a couple of years. What's their next step? Are they going to be coding the rest of their lives, or where's the growth plan for when they get bored with writing functions and algorithms?
I mean, it's kind of whatever you want to do. Like some people really enjoy managing, and then they go into management from engineering or from being a developer. That's great. Good for them. Like
Okay.
cool.
So like where you
Um,
work now, are people moving out of programming into other jobs? Are they switching to management design, or they do it in managing the business, or where do they go? Or do they just stay in programming? Is that kind of typical?
yeah, I think it's typical for like if you're working as a developer, then you would go on to manage developers. I think like, kind of staying in the general area is really common. I think it's pretty rare for folks to be working as a developer and then go like manage designers, for example. Some people very specifically never want to go into management and just become more and more like senior developers. They probably get more involved in, or potentially get more involved in like architecture or strategy, like product strategy. Um, there are a lot of different ways that you can gain technical depth while still working as a developer that aren't necessarily uh, going into management. So, but really, it's just kind of figuring out what you like, and you might try something for a couple years and realize, actually, this is not my thing. I think that's super valid.
Okay. Just a couple more questions. What blind spots do we have? We're C# developers. We know databases. We can do controllers, models, views. Uh, we're coders. What don't we know that we should know that will hold us back as valuable contributors to Stack Overflow or Facebook?
Um, I think that one of the most challenging things about my job is being able to read other people's code and understand what they're doing. And I think that that maybe, I'm not sure how much you learn about that in school because again, don't have a
Mhm.
computer science degree, but um, uh,
So what I'm
in
thinking about
almost,
is like, you came out from outside of our role, and now you're in
yeah,
it. So
yeah.
as a senior manager, business leader, or designer, or human resources, or operations, or any of the other departments that are looking at us, what do they see that we are ignorant of? We need to know
Mm.
that we're not as good at as we should be if we had a better perspective on how the business runs. Anything there?
Yeah, that's a
Or
good question.
so
That's a
I mean,
tough
because
question.
I guess thinking as a designer is, do you see that coders are bad designers, or do they know what they're doing in design?
I think that most people do not have both skill sets, for sure. But I think most people have enough of the other skill set to make it work.
Here's a question: did you ever get in trouble for using Stack Overflow to work on Stack Overflow?
No, no, no. I mean, in in the like industry, it's really normal to just use Stack Overflow all the time. I think maybe it's only in like an academic setting where maybe it's frowned upon.
Okay, so here's the article that started this conversation. So the title was "I Followed My Dreams and Got Demoted to Software Developer." So here's the entire details. Very well written article. Kristen, you're a good writer. Appreciate the brevity and yet the interest that was there. Have you gotten any other interest? Anyone emailing you and saying that this resonates with them?
Yeah, I've gotten a ton of like Twitter DMs and LinkedIn messages and emails and whatever from people asking me questions or saying that like they had a similar story. It was on Hacker News, and maybe I spent way too much time one day reading the comments on Hacker News. There were a lot of them, so yeah, there's been a lot of discussion. It's been interesting to read.
All right. Well, hey, thank you very much for talking to us. I really appreciate this. And uh, we got graduates here. Maybe you'll see some resumes from Grand Canyon University and go work at Stack Overflow.
Yeah, and if anyone has any questions that they didn't, want to ask in the setting or whatever, you can always find me on Twitter at first name, last name, like at Christina Lustig. So if you want, you can message me and I can help out.
Very nice. Thank you, Christina.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.